Hey everybody, welcome to my channel. So this video is going to be about hypertuning and some repairs that need to be done to my CGEM mount. A couple years ago, I did a couple short videos, about 3 years ago, just showing kind of the before and after of my results when I hypertuned this. So it's been a little bit of time, but hopefully I can remember and make things even better this time around, being that it'll be the second go around. What kind of sprung this was a few nights ago. I had something catastrophic happen during an imaging session. Uh, my laptop, I never pushed the plug in completely. It was sticking out maybe about another 1/16 of an inch, and it was never fully engaged. And I didn't realize it. And just about the time when I was going to bed, which just so happened to coincide with when my mount was going to be doing a meridian flip, the computer died and the mount lost communication with it, and I don't know what happened. I guess the mount just kind of went rogue. It slewed and slewed, I guess, till it hit its hard stops and just kept going, is what I'm kind of gathering from it. When I woke up in the morning, just looking at the position it was in, I knew it wasn't good. So the counterweights were up high. The telescope itself was down low. It was facing my house really low, so it was almost like the deck was in its park position or home position. And when I tried slewing it just to put it to a park position, there was all kinds of noises. It sounded like some grinding, almost gears grinding. It just wasn't good. I'll attach a short clip of when I was trying to slew it, the sounds and how the mount was moving. It was very jittery. It was stop, go, stop, go, stop, go. I have some strip bolts that are in here that I want to get repaired. They've been kind of loose for a while now. I'm also going to end up replacing the motors that are in this because I believe that they're bad, especially the RA. Maybe not so much the deck, but I was getting a little bit annoyed. So I'm just going to do the whole thing, do it right, and know that it's going to be good. We're going to hypertune this in the process on top of those repairs. So I'll show you how to do that. We're also going to be replacing the larger bearings in this. Last time when I hypertuned it, I only replaced the small spur gear bearings. Those ones were ceramic hybrid, fantastic bearings that were put in this. As far as the larger bearings that come in this that are in your RA and your deck, the ones that Celestron actually has in these are pretty dang good. I did order some new ones. I'm going to try those out and see how they perform. But honestly, if you're just hypertuning this, really the main, unless you have issues with those other bearings, once we take them out and spin them and just kind of get the feel for them, they're probably pretty good. You know, just even if you clean them out and re-grease them and, you know, or just repack them. So those bearings are actually really good, but I'm going to try replacing them with some other ones that I have on order. They're not ceramic hybrids. Those ones were really expensive, like $80, $90 a piece, and you need 6 of those. But definitely highly recommend replacing the smaller bearings with some hybrids. So anyway, without further ado, let's get into this and tear it apart. So here you'll see that this is kind of what I encountered. Definitely sound like you don't want to be here. Very stiff, didn't want to move. Not good. All right, so here's what you're going to need to do this project. So if we're replacing our larger bearings, you need 6 of those. We got our 4 hybrid ceramic bearings here for our worm gears. You're going to need some needle nose pliers, Allen wrenches, standard antimetric, have a headlamp. This, if you have to retap screws, which I do, the ones I'm replacing are their M6s. So I got the threaded inserts after I drill it, retap it. Wrench, toothbrush. These are the assorted thickness Teflon spacer shims. So Get yourself plenty of those. Screwdrivers, Super Lube is the grease that we'll be using. Citrus degreaser, I just put it in a bottle so it's easier for me to work with. Never Dull metal polish, digital calipers, and then our sandpaper. And I just don't have the package for the 1200 grit that I also used. But that's everything here that you're going to need to conquer this project. All right, so first things first, I'm going to take this cover off here. I want to see if there's anything noticeable where the deck and right ascension motors are. Well, so I don't see any shavings or anything inside there, so the gears on those motors I don't believe are binding up. I don't see any signs of anything there. However, I do think that motor might be bad. The other thing to do while you're in here is if you never changed this little wash battery that's in here, that would be a good time to do it. Put the cover back on because I don't need to have that off. That's really not part of the hyper tuning. But anyway, I just wanted to kind of get a look in there just to gauge, just see if I could see anything. I also took my pole master off, took the counterweight bar off. So first things first here to begin dismantling, I'm just going to take off this the saddle. I could feel like how tight my deck is here. The RA, I mean, it's a little stiff, but it definitely moves a lot more free than my deck. All right, so now that we got the saddle off, what we're gonna do is we're gonna unlock our deck, unlock the RA, turn it upside down and lock the RA. Now I'll get you in a better position here, show you what's going on. So you're gonna take, this is a 1/16 of an inch Allen key. I thought that these were all metric, but this fits in here really well. So if you look here, there's a little tiny port hole. So and you'll see two little grub screws here. So you just got to rotate to get yourself lined up here. And then get these loose. You know, back them off until they start to kind of poke out. Rotate this, the other one. That loose. And get you know, a small pair of needle nose, and you'll see these two little holes here. I mean, you could try to get like a wrench on there, but you're probably going to scratch it all up. But see if you can get that in there, and then give it some good pressure and try to break it free. Hopefully yours isn't too tight. And you can actually just hold that in place once you get it free. And just rotate your deck and back it off. Get this to a loose point. There you go. And just take this lock nut off, set it aside. And then so here you want to be careful. There's a bearing in here that is probably going to fall out on you. So I'm just going to release my RA, and hold my hand over this, spin this around, give it a shake, and let it drop out in your hand. So there's these couple screws here. There's 4 of them here that are holding your deck on. And this one's not tight. So this is one of them that is stripped I mean, it's snug in there, but you could just tell it's not really grabbing. All right, so you got your four screws out. So there's two little grub screws here as well. So there's one right down here in the bottom, right underneath. It's real tiny. The other one's right on the other side here. So let's see what size those are. So what these little grub screws do is they actually adjust the tension, your gear mesh for your worm gear that's in here. And then you have another gear that it's a circular gear, as you'll see. So that's how you kind of mesh these two together. Maybe a 2 metric. Yep. So you'll see now that this is all free, you should be able to just pull this out. And I think when I took mine off the first time, and you could see here, there's quite a bit of paint that bled through. And if I remember, I just kind of had to hit it with a rubber mallet and just kind of break it free because it was a little glued there. All right, so our deck is now off. So you'll see here, there's a bearing here. And you just pull straight up and out. If you, you know, pull it at an angle, it's gonna get stuck. So just pull that straight up and out, and we'll just set this off to the side. So we'll start off by taking our polar scope cap off, and then also if you do have a polar scope, which I do, but I don't use it anymore, remove that. And so you release your clutch, and we're gonna have to take this off of here. So again, inside of there, there's a few grub screws you'll see the holes for. And these are just the Phillips. Okay. All right, so once these grub screws and this plate is off, that gives us more room to work with. And like I said, try a strap wrench. There we go. And then this will just thread right off. So just, and then you can see there's a bearing is actually coming out with it. So just don't drop anything here. There we go. So you got this piece. So again, just make sure your grub screws are backed out far enough that they're not, you know, making contact with the thread, you know, holding you up. And break it free. So the other thing, and we don't want to forget to do, is take this off. Just like we did on the deck. Let's take this. Don't lose your screw. Get this backed out all the way. Now we should just be able to pull this right up and out. Just watch, there's this bearing here. And then you have your RA assembly here. Don't forget about this little tab that's in here. We'll get that out so we don't lose it. There that is. if your altitude and your azimuth don't move very good, you know, while you got this apart and everything and you're working on it, you might want to address it. And a couple things you could do here. So I guess we'll take mine off so I can show you what I had done. Sanded this really well, both the top of this your tripod and also the underneath. There was a lot of paint and everything on this, so what I did was I sanded this down with a block of wood and some fine grit sandpaper. It's really sanded this down. I even polished it, and then I put grease on it. That helped out a lot with the stiffness of just this going back and forth when you're trying to pull or align. So definitely a recommendation as well. This is, you know, while you're working on this, to maybe address some of these other little issues. Highly recommend it. And then even your adjustment knobs, maybe putting some anti-seize on those as well, just to help keep things lubricated and moving. And then for, let's say, for your altitude adjustment, taking needle nose pliers, and get this spun free. This large nut here, which is just kind of sandwiching all this together, it might be just a little too tight, putting so much pressure on it that this is really stiff to move up and down. So you could always just back this off just a little bit, just make your fine tuning that much easier. All right, so now that we got our deck off, you know, just get yourself set up on your workbench. Make sure you have a tray for all your parts that you're pulling off. So these are all the deck parts. So if you look inside here, so here's your worm gear, and then you have this gear here. This is the worm wheel gear. And just kind of looking around, I don't see any metal shavings or anything in here, so it doesn't appear to have any bad gears. Grease is a little dirty. The grease, I remember when I was cleaning this for the very first time, the grease that they had in here was pretty thick and gunky. So by changing with a better lubricant's going to help things move much better. And then, so to get this taken apart, you're going to want to get a screwdriver, take off your lock, your clutch here, just kind of back this off here, just once you get that loose. And inside here there's a little tab. Might not come out, it might fall out, but if there's quite a bit of grease in there, just the suction is just going to kind of hold it in place. But just make sure that you have this out. And just set these off to the side. Once that's done, you'll see you got some Teflon spacers in here. Set those off, and then you just turn this upside down, maybe give it a couple taps. Things should come out. And if it's kind of hanging up at all when you're trying to take off your worm wheel gear here. It could be your set screws that are in here. It could be poking out a little bit, so you might just need to back them out a little bit, but everything should just come out nice and easy. Like I said, if they come out a little crooked, they're going to get stuck. You may just need a little block of wood, a mallet or dead blow hammer. Just kind of work it. There you go. And everything's going to be covered in grease, so just kind of wipe things down. And then you can set them off to the side for cleaning. So when you're cleaning these, when you're cleaning everything off, you could use soap, water, or just a simple like citrus degreaser. I wouldn't use anything, you know, too abrasive. We'll set this off in here. All right, so you're also gonna probably have some spacers that might be inside here. You can just get those out. Yeah, and the grease is just gonna be kind of holding everything in there. And these I did replace last time when I Hypertuned this. These are just Teflon spacers. You want to get assorted sizes though. These are a 40 millimeter inside diameter, and these are, you know, different thicknesses because your spacing is gonna matter for how you line up all of your gears, so things are meshing properly. You know, these things are mass produced, so they're probably just using standard you know, standard spacers and whatnot, but the precision of the gears obviously is gonna you know, vary. So you may want to get yourself some of these. Again, sorted sizes, they're all different thicknesses. I can feel this one here is a lot thicker than this one. I did replace mine though, because my spacing was off. Next, so this is your spur gear with your worm gear as well. So we'll take this apart, and what you want to start with is on the opposite side of your spur gear. Let's see if we could pop this off of here. This little cover. There you go. And then so if you look inside of here, there's a little lock nut here. So way to get that out of there is use a really small needle nose pliers like I have here, and you stick it in those holes. And once you get it, get that out of there. And then also inside of here, you're going to see another little lock nut there with, again, it's got 2 notches in it, so you should be able to just get a set of small needle nose pliers in there. This one's a little bit more difficult to get at. And so once that comes out of there, you'll have 2 little grub screws here holding on your spur gear. All right, so now that you got this side out, you should be able to, and you got your spur gear loose. There you go. Once you get that spur gear kind of stop hanging you up, Your bearing should come out. Then you also have another bearing. You should be able to just kind of push that out with your finger. And then we can start cleaning this stuff. So like I said, just get yourself just some citrus degreaser. I just have this in a little spray bottle. Just give them a couple spritz and throw them inside, let them soak. And then what you can do here too is just use a small nylon brush, like a little toothbrush, and you just give things, don't use a wire brush or even a brass bristled brush, just something soft. Get these parts good and clean. Alright, so all these parts are wiped down. The other thing too, you don't want to lose track of, and I just realized because mine had never come out, that little piece I was telling you about was inside here for your lock nut. Just kind of poke it. You don't want to lose that piece. And all that is just this little brass tab. I don't know what you want to call it, but just so you don't lose that. Then for your main gear here, just you want to, like I said, spray everything down. Get all your grease off. Inside of here as well. And that's it. All right, now we'll move on to our RA here. So that off there. You'll see again, you got your spacers. And then you also have to take this off of here. 5mm. Yeah, that's loose. That's another strip. You can get those loosened up, and then also you have right here again, you have another set screw, and this is there's two of these. What these do is these set your tension for your gear mesh. For your worm gear and your worm wheel gear. Again, don't take them out so you don't lose them, but just back them out far enough that you can see the head, then you know you're out far enough. Should be able to remove this housing. Don't lose your screws. Same process to get this apart as your other one. Then your wheel gear here. Again, just kind of work things up. Take a look at your teeth, make sure everything looks good. I've not seen any type of wear or shavings or anything like that, so that's good. Set that off to the side, and then your last bearing, and then your last is your spacers. Just throw that off to the side. Again, you grab your rag and just kind of wipe off all this excess grease. So it looks like I got at least 2 strip bolts here for that worm gear housing that I have strip threads are going to have to fix, and then also my motors. But I mean, as far as everything else, this is held up very well. I got these bearings on order. I'm going to replace them. These are the original ones. I don't know. I don't think there's really anything wrong with them. I do have one of them that seems a little bit stiffer, but it still spins smooth. It's just I wonder if maybe there's just too much grease packed inside it. Pop that out of there. You know, but just check all your bearings, make sure they're spinning good. Just kind of take a look. So these are, you know, pre-packed with their grease, so just take a razor blade. There we go. So, I mean, this one's got grease in it as well, but it don't seem like it has as much in there, so maybe that's just kind of what's slowing that one down. It's just there's a little somewhat too much suction, I guess. But so it's all, I mean, it's good to open these up just to kind of take a look at them, make sure that you don't, you know, they're not, there's no broken parts in there, there's no metal, and that there's sufficient grease. Now you just pop these back on top. So I don't know, we'll see what the ones I ordered look like. I know the hybrid style bearings of these were really expensive. They're I think like around $80 a piece, and I mean you need 6 of them. So obviously it's an expense that you may not want. And so for reference and ordering purposes, if you guys are looking to buy new bearings, so these larger bearings, you have 6 of these. These are all in millimeters, so they're 15 millimeters wide, 40 millimeter inside diameter, and then your outside diameter is 68. The small ones, these ones are for your spur gear, worm gear. These are the ceramic hybrids. These ones are 7 millimeters wide, 8 millimeter inside diameter, and then your outside diameter is 22 mil. All right, so now that everything's disassembled, you know, and your deck is taken apart just like or your RA is taken apart just like we did the declination, you know, starting removing your cover and the locking nuts and everything here from the opposite side of your spur gear. So once you get all that disassembled, you're gonna kind of clean, sand polish all the brass parts, and so that's what we're gonna get into now. Anyway, get all your grease and everything wiped off all your parts. You know, keep everything together in the respective trays. That way nothing's mixed up. to get in the teeth here, I would just use just a little toothbrush. And just set that off to the side, dry. Once you get everything kind of just rinsed off into a a clean state, now we're going to start kind of sanding and polishing these some of these parts. So you could take your sandpaper. I kind of already hit this one with the 800 grit. Like I said, you could use 800, then 1000, then the 1200. You just want to make sure you got a nice smooth surface when you're done. But anyway, that one was hit with the 800. So it's just a lot of little hand sand in here. This is probably where I spent a good majority of my time last time I did this. You see it there. I mean, it's pretty dull, but that's what you want. But it looks good. There's no deep gouges, scratches, or anything like that. So that's with the 1000 grit. And let's do this again. And while that's drying, we'll move on to some other parts. So you'll do that with both of these worm gear bearings or wheel bearings. The other parts you're going to need to sand. It's going to be inside here. And same thing, you're just going to step it up in grits, starting with your 800 and working your way up to the 1200. So we'll get this sanded, the other couple parts. Obviously be careful. You don't want to get dust inside where your electronics are. But I would give it just this lip a quick sanding in here. And even maybe just give this one here a quick little sand. But just like I said, be careful that your electronics are in there, that you're not getting dust inside there. So once this is sanded, your worm wheel bearings or gears are sanded. The only other thing is on the mount itself is you're going to want to wipe this down inside here, and then also sand just the interior and the back side here. Just some never dull. You could just use any general purpose, like an all metal polish compound, which for brass, metal. So this is what I'm going to use. And then you're just going to buff everything to a nice shine. That feels good. All right, we'll move over to the bench to get all our small parts. All right, so now we'll start polishing all this stuff. But like I said, I don't know if you can see these little divots I got here on this is my right ascension wheel gear. I think those are just from these set screws that are, in this little ring. I think that are just putting those, but They're fine as long as you sand them down so that they're smooth. You can't feel no burr. You'll be good. So we'll grab our Never Dull. I'm just gonna polish all this stuff up that you sand it. And you can use, I guess, a buffing wheel on this, but yeah, you want to be real careful you don't drop nothing. I just find if you could get past the hand cramps, you could do just as fine of a job with your hands and with some equipment. All right, so everything has been cleaned or degreased, cleaned, sanded, and polished. So now it's time to start reassembling and using our digital calipers to measure our spacing for our gearing. So this way we get the proper gear mesh, and I'll attach a little worksheet of all the information you're going to want to kind of write down as you're taking your measurements, so that you can figure this out properly. All right, so let's get started on that. We'll start with this is our deck. So we'll get our worm gear back installed, and it's going to be the same exact process for when you're doing your RA. So let's get all of our parts here. So we have our worm gear. We have our 2 hybrid bearings, our gear, and our lock ring. And our other lock ring. All right, so now that we have all of our parts, first thing you're going to do is you're going to take your bearing, slide that in all the way. Take your gear, drop that down, and when you're putting this in, so if you look, you have your 2 set screws, so make sure that when you're orientating this that you have the one set up with your flat side of this worm gear, and then you're just gonna slide that in, and you can put a tiny, and I mean a tiny dab on at least one of these lock screws, just to make sure that it doesn't come loose on you. That's what I did last time, and I'm gonna do it again. And you just want to use, like I said, the medium strength and not a lot. I'm talking a tiny bit. Take your bearing, just make sure everything's lined up. And then just carefully press that down into place. Locking ring. What you want to be careful here is that you don't tighten this too much, because otherwise it's not going to turn at all. You just got to find that sweet spot. And just kind of spin it, make sure that it's, spin it freely. It's not binding up in any way, but that feels pretty good. So once you get that set in place, then like I said, then you can take this last locking ring, which just basically holds your cover on. Get this put in place, and the deck is done. And we're just going to repeat the same process for your right ascension. All right. We'll take it. Looks good. And now, so the purpose of this spacing here is so that when this sits on here, like so, if you see where these two gears are going to line up on top of each other. And so if you do need to adjust that gear in out, what you can do is just to kind of line things up, just to see how it's going to sit there, and just using a flathead, take out this little screw, which will kind of open your window up so you could take a look in there just to see if they're pretty well flush end to end with each other, that one gear isn't only overlapping like halfway. That to me looks really good. All right, so kind of just take these, see how we did. They both pretty much stop at the same time, so I got about the exact same amount of tension on both of these, so that's good. And then if I just kind of grab my gear and try to go left or right with it, there is no movement laterally as far as this, so you don't want that. So that is good. These are finished. So this one was our, don't mix these up, this one's our right ascension, this one's our deck. And why you have this apart too, if you wanted to, I know I did it last time, is because you know how there's stickers on these, they kind of fall off. You know, use a little razor blade or something to score some marks just for your 0 points. So you could do that now too, while you got this apart like I had done there. And then on my RA, I just used a little cutting tool, nipped a little bit of metal off, and then I just threw some yellow paint in there. So now what we're going to end up doing before we start totally reassembling this is, now I need to work on my repairs. So like I had said, I got a couple stripped out holes. So what I want to do now is I'm going to actually remove the electronics. I do have the new motors, I got those in, so we're going to get to replacing those. So let's see what we got going on here. I'll just very carefully get this stuff out. All right, so I guess we'll get the guts out of this thing, and then we'll worry about drilling our new holes and retapping. You're going to want to kind of make some reference marks in here to where your screws are, so that when you're putting things back, your gears are kind of put back exactly where they were. See in there now? See where I have these little black lines on both sides. And so this way, hopefully things will go back to where they were when I reinstall. Seems to be a 4mm. Ugh. All right, so this is our right ascension motor. So I'm guessing this is probably like the encoder, because the other one doesn't have this black wire, black shielded wire on there. So what I do want to do though, again, is just kind of see, you know, the spacing that's out. So this way everything's going back how it was. So let's take a quick measurement on that. This little, your shaft. See how far that's sticking out. All right, so let's kind of write that down somewhere. We'll write it on the back side of this. We got 1.8. I fucking hate grub screws. I hope everybody else feels the same way about these things. So I think this one just stripped. Sure feels like it. Fucking hell. God damn it. Sure as shit did. Why wouldn't it? So now I gotta figure out how the frig I'm gonna get this off of there. Alright, so I am going to resort to trying to drill out this grub screw that's here. So I'm using right now a 3/32 bit. Well, all right. After a lot of drilling, you know, spraying some WD, trying to, you know, keep my bits from burning up. You know, I broke two. I think I was able to kind of punch through this enough. Both of these little grub screws. Maybe now I could get this off. Just very carefully, because there is this wheel here. I don't know if that's metal or plastic, but that, I don't want to bend these tabs either, but I'm just trying to see if I can push it to, if it actually loosened. Oh, yep. Oh, trying to pop it. Yes. See if I can pop this off. If it comes off. to do it off camera. It took quite a while, but I was able to get the old grub screws out of there and put new ones in. I actually had these laying around, these spares. They just so happened to fit. But I think I got these at Ace Hardware a while back for other little projects and stuff, but they have a whole assortment of little grubs. But anyway, so the new ones are in. The threads aren't messed up or nothing. But yeah, so hopefully you guys have better luck getting your parts apart than I am. This was a little bit of a headache I wasn't looking for. We'll get our new motors. So these ones I ordered from Agena Astro, they had them in stock. I really like Agena. I've been ordering a lot of stuff from them over the last couple of years. They always seem to have what I need when I need it. But these were out of stock in some other stores, so all right. All right, now we'll take this piece. So that's on there. And then now we just got to line up our gears. And that's good. All right, so that's on there. The encoder is there. So everything looks pretty good. This little black wheel rides inside of these two little wings, so I just want to make sure that it's pretty well centered and not rubbing against either side. Looks good. So, all right, the RA motor is done. So now, let's see about getting this other one out. All right, so now that that is out, we're gonna do the same thing. Take this spur gear off. Hopefully we have better luck. All right, so those are on. We are going to fix these strip tools. All right, so the kit I bought, I got this on Amazon. Put a link to it. So these are M6 by a 1 pitch thread. So you got our tap that came with it. A couple other little tools as well as the drill bit, and then a little baggie of inserts. So what these are threaded inserts. So once we drill our hole out, we're going to tap it, and then we're going to thread these inside. We'll see how well this works. When you're tapping, you just want to, you know, a couple turns ahead, kind of back it off a little bit just to kind of get any particles out of your way. Just kind of as you're going, you're clearing the threads. So then what we'll do now is we're going to take one of these. This little tool here has these little notches to slide over the pin on the inside of that. And then you're just going to thread this in. That it's not sticking up and out. Then they give you a little punch tool, this little thing. And then what you do is you're just gonna give it a shot. And it should tap that out of there. All right, so that broke. That's good and tight right there. New motors ready to go in, so we're going to start with that one. And then now with our reference marks that we put on these earlier, these little lines, so that marked right where the center of our bolt is, so that being that these are elongated, you just need to shift this around and get your bolts lined up, and you should be pretty well set where you were before he took these out. Okay, so now that we got the motors, back in, now what we can start doing is starting to reassemble this. Everything is clean, sanded, polished. So now what we're going to do, and this part, don't be intimidated by it. It's not very difficult. Just follow the spreadsheet that I'm going to attach to this. It's going to help us figure out our spacing from our wheel gear to the center, to the wheel gear, or sorry, to the worm gear of the RA and the deck. So that way, when these are together, if you can see, so that the center of the worm gear is properly meshed, falling into the center of that wheel. The way we're going to figure that out is first take a little bit of grease, and you're going to take one of your bearings, and we're going to put that inside of here. Not a lot, just a little. You just want to lube this up so it slides in okay. It doesn't bind. Also get some in the middle. And just get this in there nice and straight. It should slide right in. Once that's done, we're also going to do the same to this side. And if it doesn't go in straight, just maybe just give it a couple small taps just to work it in. And try not to get any grease inside this little rim, because that's where your clutch to lock your axes are. So if you get grease all in there, you could cause that to start kind of to slip. So if you get any in there, just, you know, try to wipe it off. I got a little fingerprint there. All right, so then we're going to take just a little bit of grease here. All right, I want you to feel good about that. So now what we're going to do is take in our caliper, our digital caliper, and we're going to set it to inches. And then just make sure that when it's closed, you're zeroed out. And what we're going to do is we're going to measure the thickness of the gear itself. So this gear here, you know, and you could kind of measure it in a couple spots just to get a general average, but they're usually pretty dang close. So right here I am at a 0.4675. All right, so now that we have that measurement, we're going to write that down here in our number A, or letter A. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take that and we're going to divide that by 2. We're going to say 0.4675, divide that by 2, it's 0.2337. So then now, with no spacers on here, because this is what we're going to be determining, is there's going to be a spacer we're going to have to put in here, but we just need to know what that is, so how high this is going to ride on the shaft. We're going to flip this upside down. We're going to slide this down. Let it fall into place. If it gets stuck on you, you know, again, just a couple light taps, just to kind of work it down, and then just, you know, kind of give it a spin, see how that feels. That's spinning nice and free. So, all right, so now using our worksheet here, get this gunk off me. So again, now, as I was doing before, so using this little piece that comes out, we're going to measure that. We're going to take a measurement here. So we're measuring from the shoulder, from the top of this gear here, down to the bottom. So that measurement there, and I measure it in the back where the worm itself is going to be. It's going to be back here. So that's where I'm going to be taking that measurement. And so there, I'm at 0.7665. And we're going to write that down. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our first measurement, or our B measurement that we wrote, and we're going to subtract that from the measurement we just took. So in my case, I have 0.7665 minus 0.2337, and then that gives me a dimension here, so I'm going to write that down, 5328. So now that we have this figured out, so now we know where the center of this is, okay? Now we're going to take our worm housing here, and if you had put that cap on, I took mine back off, this little black retain ring. So you want to take this off, because you just need to be able to get your caliper inside to measure this shaft here of the worm itself. So avoid measuring off of the flat that's in here, the flat spot of this shaft. And what we're going to do is we're just going to take a measurement of that. So right there, I'm at a 0.3140. So that's the thickness of that shaft, 0.3140. And we're going to take that measurement, we're going to divide that by 2. Again, just follow the worksheet. This, you know, not intimidating at all once you do this. Divide that number by 2, and that is 0.1570. So now with that, we just figured out where the center of this is, okay? Now that we have that measurement, what we want to do is we're going to measure now from the top of the worm shaft to the bottom of this housing, to the bottom of here. So measuring, and again, don't put it on the flat spot. Orient this in a way that the rounded part is up top. Stick your caliper in there and measure it down to the bottom. And just make sure you're on the highest point. So it looks like I am going to be at a 0.7125. So write that down, 0.715. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take that measurement F and we're going to subtract it from G. So going back to our sheet here, we were at 0.7125 minus F, which ended up being a 0.1570, equals 0.555. And then so now that we have that measurement, what we're going to do is we're going to subtract our results. So result H, we're going to subtract that from result D. So result H was 0.5555, the number we just got, and we're going to subtract result D from that. So 0.5328 equals a 0.0227. So what's that is telling us is that the shim, the Teflon spacer shim that we're going to be putting in, and it's going to go in here under the bearing, so between the bearing and the bottom of this shaft here, that's going to be a 0.020. So if you have your assorted sizes of your Teflon shims, the ones that they actually come with stock in this, they're all 0.020s, at least on my end. It's going to be, you know, as close as you can get to that number. So being that it is 0.22, a 0.20 is going to work for me. So we'll find our shims here. So this one's a 0.10. So what I want to do is find just something just a little tad thicker. That's a 0.015. That's a 0.010. I think this is a thicker one. That's a 0.015. So what I'll do is I could just use, if I have two 10s, I could use that, or a 10 and a 15. So that'll put me at 0.025. So that's pretty close to a 0.22. So I'm going to set these two off to the side, and then what we're going to do is we're going to remove this, okay? And we're going to set this off to the side. And what I'm going to do here is, just so I don't lose these, I'm just going to put my two spacers on there. So those are the ones we just figured out, and we're just going to leave those there. We're going to take our right A, or our RA worm housing there, and we're going to set that off to the side. Now we're going to move on to figuring out our declination. And so to figure that out, you know, see if I got a little block of wood or something I could put under that. There we go. And then so now taking our worm gear here for our deck, we're going to go through the same steps here. So make sure you're zeroed out, And we're going to start with taking a measurement here of the worm gear itself, or the wheel gear. So this one here, I'm at about a 0.4700. So 0.4700, 0.4700. And we're going to take that and we're going to divide that number by 2, which is going to give us a result of 0.2350. And then we're going to have to do the same measurement that we did with the other one down to the housing here. So you're going to have to get a little bit of grease. Go around the inside, go around the outside. Okay, that feels good. Get some side here. Not a lot, just a little. And then let's place this bearing down inside. All right, so now that we have our dimension for here, now what we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of grease, go around the inner side here, get our bearing in here. Do the same for the bottom, I guess, now. Taking our bearings, do the same thing with these, get a little bit of lube on there. Get that in. Get that pushed down. And then we're going to take this and we're going to set that on there just like so. What we're going to take here is, again, we're going to do the same measurement we did before, and we're going to measure from the shoulder of the gear down to the housing. So get yourself zeroed, and we're going to snap that measurement with sliding this down. .776. So point, pencil go, 0.760. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take that measurement we just took and we're going to subtract that from B. So we have 0.77760 minus 0.2350. And that's going to give us a 0.5410. And then now we're going to take our deck worm housing here, and we're going to take the same measurements we did earlier. So we're going to measure the shaft of this worm gear in here. So again, avoiding the flat, take that measurement. You can see that. And I am at a 0.3135. So 0.3135. We're going to take that measurement and divide it by 2 to figure out the center of this shaft. So 0.3135, divide that by 2 is going to be a 0.1567. And then measuring from the top of the shaft down to the bottom, we're going to snap that measurement, and I am at a 0.7070. 0.7070. And now we're going to take measurement G, and we're going to subtract measurement F from G. So measurement G was 0.7070, the one we just took. We're going to subtract 0.1567, which was the measurement from the middle of the worm shaft. Gives us an answer of 5.5503. And then we're going to take our results here, and we're going to subtract result D from H. So H was 0.5503. We're going to subtract F, 0.5410. And then so the spacer thickness that it's telling us we need is going to be a 0.0093. So that's going to be a 0.10. So spacers I have, you know, they start at a 0.010. So that's going to be close enough to a 0.009. So that's going to be the spacer shim that we use in here. So now we're done with all of our measurements. We could take this, put this back in our tray for the time being, because we're going to start assembling. We're going to assemble our RA first. Take this bearing back out. That way you don't drop this, and you'll see why in a few minutes. All right, so now that we have all our measurements, now we're going to start reassembling. So we already put our spacers in for here, for our RA. Now we're going to take our RA wheel gear here. We're going to put that back into place. And we're going to take our housing for our worm gear. I already have some grease in here, but just grease up all your gearing now for the here. So just make sure your worm's got grease on it. Make sure your spur gear has grease on it. And then also the wheel gear itself. So all right, so now you're going to want to take your RA housing here and get that put into place. And then now on the back side of this, we're going to put some spacers in here as well. So what that's going to do is, so when your ring is on here, the spacing, the spacers that we're going to be putting on top here, and I'm going to be using quite a bit. I think I'm about like a 0.030 or 0.034. This one doesn't really matter. It's kind of discretionary. But what that's going to do is create a gap between your ring this and the actual housing on the mount itself. So like if you find that when you're slewing around or moving this and you hear this kind of rubbing, by adding additional spacers in here is going to create more of a gap. So and you could put a little bit of grease on them, just helps things slide around, not much. We're just going to slide those on there, and we're going to take our last bearing here for our RA, and we're going to grease this one up as well. I'm going to slide that. On there. It's going to get stuck on me. There we go. Just a little persuasion. Maybe we'll use our little block of wood. There we go. All right, so our spacers are in between these two bearings. Everything's all lubed up. Then, now what we're gonna do is, you'll need your ring, this tapered bearing here as well. Make sure you have this all nice and greased up. You could pack a little bit of grease inside the top, the bottom. I think I'm just going to take my air hose and just throw some gobs in here and then try to blow it down inside of here to get it on the inside of these wheels. And what you're going to want to do is take a little bit of grease, and you're going to want to go let's see, inside here where this bearing is going to be. And then also inside of here. So get the smaller spot, and then this bigger, and then even on the outside here. So then we're also going to go on the back side and get some grease inside of here. So let's get that. If you put too much, you'll feel it. You'll feel a little bit of suction, I guess. You can just take it apart, wipe off one of them, put it back together. There's going to be plenty in there to go around. We forgot to put our bolts in for the housing, so let's just do that now. I mean, I could have done it over there, but it's just going to be easier on the bench. And these, you're not going to tighten these down. You're just going to snug these up, because we are going to have to adjust these with these grub screws that are in here. It's kind of a push-pull type setup to get your worm gear and your wheel gear meshing correctly, so that it's not too tight, not too loose, because you don't want to bind it and you don't want too much play. So just get them on. And the reason why I said before, make sure you take that bearing out of your deck is because if this flips over this way, you don't want that bearing falling out. So don't forget to take that out of there, okay? And then, so like I said, with those shims, that we put in. I put quite a few. There's like 3 of them, I believe, between those, sandwiched between those 2 bearings. What that does is causes, you know, a gap here. So this way, you know, this is not causing some friction, more binding. That way everything's spinning freely. Maybe I got too many in there, I don't know. That's just, like I said, it's discretionary. Use about at least a 0.20, if not 0.30 by just stacking. Once that's done, then you're going to take your taper bearing here, get that slid into place, and then we're going to tighten this up and clean our hands. Kind of wipe down any of these surfaces. You got all greased up so you could actually grip things. All right, so now that we got the RA in, what you want to do here is you don't want to tighten this so tight that we're just compacting everything together. You want it loose enough that it's spinning freely, but not so loose that you have play. So if I back this off, can you hear that? So what I'm doing is trying to rock this back and forth. So as you're tightening this, you kind of want to try to rock it and then stop once you feel that wobble go away. And that, to me, right there, seems pretty good. It's falling. You know, you don't have a whole lot of weight on here, so it isn't going to swing like a pendulum. But like I said, you just want to tighten this to that point where you're not getting that rocking, and that you don't feel any movement back and forth. So to me, that seems like that's pretty good for me. I'm gonna tighten in the set screws here on this ring. But if you get this far and you know, this isn't moving freely, even with this being loose, you're gonna have to go back and sand the outside of that brass wheel gear, or even sand in the inside of the housing here where these bearings are. But primarily that's going to end up being that brass wheel gear. So really, you know, sand, you're gonna have to take off some more material on that just to make sure. See, it could be that you have too much grease in there, but that's going to be where you're going to want to put your focus to get this kind of dialed in and spinning the way it should, nice and free. So if I bring you closer in here, you're going to see what I'm talking about here with the gap between here and here. Okay, so the more spacers you add there, the bigger that gap is going to be. So nothing's rubbing. I probably got about maybe about a 1/16 of an inch. All right, and then now that we have this so that it's falling freely and no rock, I don't feel nothing really pushing and pulling on that. You could take now your grub screws here and get these tightened in. So we got the those grub screws tightened in, and we're happy with how this is moving. You know, we could always go back and adjust it if things seem like they're getting tight as we're tightening down those grub screws. Maybe just back this off a little bit more, tighten it down, because it might shift as we're tightening those. But now that that's in, we're going to take, I got my little tray left over here, so we're going to put that little ring, retaining ring, back into this. What we're going to do is put in our, our clutch lock here. So what I'm going to do is on these two little pieces, I'm going to put just a little dab of grease on there to help hold that in so it's not falling as we try to put it in. All right, so that's on there, just like so. It's sitting on the top, and then we'll just, and then tighten this in. Everything just wants to be difficult. And then just tighten this all the way up till you feel it can't go no more. There we go. And then now that's locked, so what I'm going to do is position this, yeah, about there. Set your handle in a good spot. So there I'm loose, and then there I'm tight. That's good there. All right, so I got that now where I like it, and we're just going to throw a screw in there. All right, and then we're just going to lock that clutch in place. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to grease the top of this. I think we already did before. We're going to get our bearing and put our bearing in. All right, so now we're back over at the bench, and what we're going to do is we're going to get some grease, and we're going to grease this all up. Now we're going to take two spacers, or at least one. You want to put a spacer in the bottom here, at least a 0.020. So I got I believe it's a 10, 2 10s. Yep. So take those and drop those down inside, and then you should already have your bearings in your wheel here, wheel gear. Now what we're going to do is we're going to grease these gears. We're going to just kind of test fit it in here. Just to make sure that we don't need to make any further adjustments to this brass gear. So if it's tight, you might need to do some additional sanding. It should spin, you know. It feels pretty good there. You know, might have a little too much grease in there, so just maybe work it around. You kind of see the lines there where it's kind of rubbing a little bit. Let's see if that helps. That feels better to me. Not feeling any resistance. But if you are, again, just take it out. You're going to have to sand again. Sand that outside and just repeat. Okay. Get this back off. Leave our spacers in. And what we have to put on first is our worm housing. So grease this up, grease up your worm gear and your spur gear. Now we could take this, put this in. Just get it in place. All right, that is together. Now would be the time to this this bearing here for the bottom, you know, grease that up, get that ready to go. Mine's ready. And then too, what we can do, I guess we'll do this now, is this little black retaining ring here to hold that cap. Let's just get that in place now. That's in. Everything is lubed up. So now we're going to go back over to the mount. First, don't forget, so this is going to be the spacer now that we measured for our deck. So that's where the measurement spacer, that's where that's going to go on your deck. All right, so now carefully drop your deck down, get it into place. Sure won't get hung up on here. There we go. So fight with it. And then we're going to grab our black retaining ring and this, can't remember what this is called, use this chamfered or beveled bearing. So that's going to go, we're working on the deck now, that's going to go up inside here. Don't forget to rub some grease up in here where this is going to go. You're gonna slide that bearing up inside, and then make sure when you're putting this in, you know, you have two holes on this side, so that's so you get a needle nose pliers in there to tighten it. So you want to make sure you're putting that with those two holes facing down, facing out. Okay. And again, once you get it, tight as much as you can with your finger, maybe back it off just a fraction of a turn. See how that feels. And then that should be good for me. And then we can tighten up those little grub screws under there. Now we'll lock this back in the upright position. Get these bolts in the housing. couldn't get these holes lined up. So the push-pull grub screws here, just make sure they're good and loose so you could get this stuff lined up. Yeah, that doesn't want to spin now all of a sudden. So let's see what's going on here. All right, so everything is now back together. You know, I got to admit, I did fuss a lot about with this declination. When I tightened this down, seemed like it got a little stiff on me. So, you know, I took it back off. I resanded the brass, repolished everything, greased it, put it back on, and everything seemed good. But again, when I tightened this housing down, it, you know, it stiffened up just a little bit too much. You know, it was a little bit better, but oh, anyway, long story short, took it apart again. And then I started to take a look at my bearings, just spinning them. I mean, they all spun okay, but some of them spun a little bit easier than others. And I think some of they just had a little bit too much grease in it. So I swapped it out with some better ones that I had that were just spinning a little bit better. They seemed like they probably had a little less grease in them. And I put those in, and you know, now it's much better. So if you got stiction, could be a couple things, you know, take your time with it, you know, fuss, but don't obsess. You know, you want to do it right, you know, why you got it apart. So take your time with it. Chores, you know, so just do the job right. But you got to look at everything. So, you know, possibly could be your bearings, too much grease in there. Could be too much grease you put inside on the other parts. Or maybe you just need to do a little bit extra sanding. So, but take your time with it, experiment, test it, and, you know, when you get it to a point you're happy with it, call it good. So if you need to take a lot of material off, I guess, if you're still getting if you get a lot of stiction in your RA or your deck, what you're going to want to do is continue to sand those the wheel gear. So I did have to take quite a bit more off, a little bit more than, you know, hand sanding, you know, is going to take forever. And so I kind of made this little contraption here. And of course, you know, if you're going to do this, you know, you're going to do it at your own peril. So you need to be really careful, because if this ever flew off and, you know, hit the ground, it's going to be, you know, game over. So if you look here, I kind of set my drill up on my bench here. I have it clamped down, and then just using I think it was like a quarter inch piece of all thread, and you could use whatever, but something that's going to fit into your drill chuck. And then just with I cut 2 little circles of wood and put one on each side, and then I just kind of sandwiched it together. Put 2 nuts on this side. I didn't have a 4th nut, so I just put some electrical tape to prevent that one from walking. But you're just going to tighten that, you know, together, just make a sandwich basically. Put that into your drill, and then by turning it and then holding your sandpaper on there, you'll be able to take off a lot more material much faster and easier. But this is where, like in the deck, there's a lot of surface area that's making contact. Not so much in the right ascension, but it's just a quick and easy way to do this. But you just, like I said, you need to be extremely careful that this is secure and it's not going to come flying off. So let me show you here. And just go back and forth with your sandpaper. You can see how nice that's gonna make it. And then what I'm gonna do here is just give it a quick wipe. Make sure your nuts aren't loosening up here. I'm gonna clean off these teeth, make sure that they're blowing out pretty well, that there's no dust inside of them, and then we're gonna polish this. That is how I did that, and as you'll see here, I mean, that really cleans that up to a nice shine. So what I want to do now is I just want to throw the saddle on just to get a little bit weight up top, just to check and make sure that this is going to spin the way I think it is. So I'm just going to throw one screw in it just to get it on. And I think that's, you know, the best you're going to get with it. You know, it's moving freely. That should balance really, really nice. So I'm happy with that. So now what we're going to do is now we're going to actually tune it. We're going to put in our clutch stop here. So let's get that. Keep that in place. All right. All right, that's on. All right, so now what we're going to do here is we're going to take a look at our gear mesh here on our spur gears. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so now that the clutch is on, what we're going to do is we're going to I'm going to take the saddle back off here. And what we're going to do now is we're going to tune the mount and get the gears meshing properly. All right, so now we're going to wire up the motors. We got to put this back on. So we're going to have to power this up to do our next step. So I put it here. Hopefully you can see. All right, so we just got the three wires to reconnect on here. So red one obviously goes on this little one. And then you know, and if you connect these backwards, you'll know it when you push the button. And get some power. Let's turn it on. Well, it's definitely moving better than it was last time, so those motors, that was it. They sound pretty good. But so what we're going to do here is we're going to kind of listen. So if you hear like a wah, 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 that's probably going to be coming from your spur gears here. So they might be too tight. So the tighter those gear teeth are to each other, the more pressure they're going to put. So if there's not enough, you're going to end up with a lot of backlash. So you kind of want to just find the balance to where you're not binding up the motor and that you're not too loose either. And so where we're going to be looking is going to be inside of these holes here, one here and one here. So what you want to do, and it's going to be nearly impossible to get it on camera, but that's where your gears are, your spur gears. So you just want to make sure that they're not too tight and not too much space in between them. And so the way we adjust that is by just loosening those motor mount bolts, and then we just shift the motor, you know, towards the gear just to kind of push them together a little bit tighter or move them away. So that's how you're going to adjust that. And so if you could see in there, you can see your gears. So that's the one for the deck, and then just underneath that silver screw there, you can take that off, and that's where your RA gear motor is at. All right, so now what we're going to do is be using these push pull screws to adjust the worm gear here against the wheel gear. So if you see right now, this isn't tight. You don't want it slopping around, but you don't want it tight either, because you want to be able to move it. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to start slewing this deck. And as we're doing it, we're going to tighten. And then you hear it's getting louder. So I'm too tight. So just get it to where it starts to make that sound. And then back it off. Just a hair. Now we're also going to tighten in the back while we're moving it. Too much. So right there, makes it a little louder, but and then once you get this one to where it stops making noise, then just tighten this back one in. All right, so that seems pretty good. And what we're going to do now is we're going to cinch down these bolts here, but we're going to keep slewing it just in case this decides to start shifting it's shifting it down or something. Right, so that one's tight. That's tight. I don't want to go crazy tight with these because you'll strip them out. Then you'll be replacing those threads like I did. So that seems really good to me. Maybe a touch on the louder side, but there's not going to be really any backlash in my gears. So, all right, so we're going to call the deck good, and then now we're going to do the exact same thing with the RA. So the first one we're going to want to do is tightening this one down is going to pull up on that worm gear. It's going to pull it into the wheel gear. So That's pretty tight there, but I bet if I back this one off, maybe I'll loosen. Make sure these are loose. That one's loose. Oh, wrong button. So there we go. So see, now that I loosened up those bolts, now I can move this. So just make sure you're loose. And now the more you tighten it, the louder it's going to get. And it's too tight. Let's say maybe about right there. All right, so I tightened that one up until it hit, and then I backed it off. And I'm just going to try to tighten this one ever so slightly. All right, right there, I think. And then now if I tighten this one up, snug it good. It's a little loud. I'm gonna back this one off just a twitch. And tighten that one the same. I'm going to call that that good. And then we're going to tighten down the housing bolts. Move it around a little as we're doing so, just to make sure the sound hasn't changed. This last one. So it's just a little bit of back and forth, you know, but after we get this completely done, I recommend, you know, you load it up, put your gear on it, you know, rather than having to do it on a night when you're trying to do some imaging. You know, you don't want to waste good hours. Load it up and then slew this around with some real weight on there and see if you need to make any other adjustments to this. It's possible you will, but just do that before you just take this out to do some imaging. All right, so now we're all tuned up here. We're going to grab our battery, throw our battery in the cover, put the cover on, and can continue to chug along here. We're going to take our little cover that we have here in the back, this little ring, we're going to get this put in. All right, ring is on. You got your polar scope, which I do, but I don't use this anymore. You throw that back on there. Put your cover on. And we're just buttoning things up now. So we could take our little, I don't know what you want to call these little sticky things, little tabs. You can pop those back in there. We're going to take those little portholes here where you can see the spur gear meshing. We got our two little silver screws. We're going to put those in. We'll take our counterweight bar, get that on, take our saddle, all right, saddle's on, and I'm gonna do here, we're gonna just disconnect the power. We don't need that anymore. Let's check this out. So that looks good. So check it side to side. I mean, that's where we balance. So, I mean, that's just perfect. I'm pretty happy with that. Hopefully you guys are having the same results. So that's it. That's completely all together, reassembled, and ready to go. All right, so we got the mount all loaded up. Got my OTA on here, everything, just as if I was gonna do some imaging. What I'm checking now is just to see if there's any slop or any more improvement I need to make as far as my gear mesh for my the worm gear and the worm wheel gear. So if you notice, and it's a lot easier to tell once you get some weight on these, is just start kind of rocking your axis. So you can see I got a little bit of play in my deck and then also in the RA. So didn't really notice it before when I didn't have it loaded up, and I was just kind of adjusting my gear mesh. Everything seemed like it was okay. But now that it's loaded up, I could definitely tell I got a little too much slop, I think, in there. So let's see if we can tune this a little bit tighter. So I'm going to start with the deck, and I'm just going to back off these 4 bolts here, and we'll start slewing it. You know, and you want to slew this pretty far, because it might sound okay here, but then as you get into different positions, the sound might change. So I'm going the other way. I started trying to tighten back there, but that wasn't doing anything. So now I go in the other direction, tightening this one. So now you can see here, coming back, it sounds a lot worse. Now I just back that off just a touch. And see right there, now all of a sudden it's starting to bind again. So I got to back this off again. And you just want to be careful doing this, you know, that you're not over tightening things. It's a little loud, but that just means that the mesh gearing is pretty tight. But now you hear it coming back. It definitely struggles a little bit more. Back it off just that little bit. Sounding better. And so now as I'm slewing, and it's starting to bind up again, so I'm gonna back it off again, just a touch. I'm gonna start tightening these up as I'm moving. See, so now it's struggling again there. So as you start tightening these, you know, it's going to kind of change that setting just a little bit. And you hear it's gotten louder, and I didn't adjust that. So it's just a balancing act. You can hear how quiet it got there. Let's just see. Got very little play. It's definitely better than it was because I don't hear it clicking now when I was before, like when I was turning it. It's definitely tighter. Keep going in this direction. We're going to tighten up these last two bolts. Try going back the other way now. And I'm just going to snug up now this back grub screw. This was loose, so that I was tightening and loosening this one just to kind of push it back and forth. So that's sounding pretty good. As it's going around, you don't hear it binding up. So it's just fractions of turns you want to make here. It's getting a little louder, but it's not binding. That seems pretty good there. Now, like I said, we got to do the RA, which I have that loose already, so it's going to wobble a little bit more. I backed off those bolts, but as far as the deck goes, I mean, it's such a slight movement, so I'm pretty happy with that adjustment there. So now we're going to move on to doing our RA. And I'm not really getting any change, so let's loosen this one quite considerably. And then, all right, so you can just see the head poking out there. So now we're gonna just try tightening this one as we move. There we go. So you can hear the noise change. So that's obviously too tight. Getting louder. If you go too tight, it's gonna bind, it'll stop. So, and you can hear it now, it's kind of screaming. So I'm backing it off just a little bit, just to let that noise die down a little bit. Start walking it back up. All right, right there. So, I mean, it's running a little loud, which, I mean, it's not necessarily a terrible thing, but you don't want it too tight because you don't want to burn your motors out. You know, so you just kind of, I guess, just, kind of feel it. I just back it off just a hair. And then, all right, so now you see, now I didn't turn it at all at that point, and now it started making some different noises here. So it is a little too tight now if I get down into this position. So I'm gonna back it off now. Kind of helped. Oh, I think we hit the hard stop there, but it's definitely struggling coming back up. So backing it off. So it's just a dance, man. You just got to go back and forth with it, back and forth with it. So right now it's pretty quiet. All right, hard stop hit. I'm gonna start tightening these bolts in. Tightening this up. All right, so all four of those are tight. The only one I didn't tighten up was this bottom one, but that shouldn't adjust anything now that everything's locked down into place. Go back down with it. This is the side it seemed like I was having a little bit more noise on. Just when it got down to that low point. I always remember having some play like this in the RA, and honestly never caused me any issues as far as, you know, guiding and imaging and stuff. So anywho, I mean, that's how you're gonna want to tune this, you know, after you get it loaded up. Dial it in the best you can. Wow, guys. So, all right, it's finally over. We got this thing back together. A lot of work over the last couple of days spent doing this, but, you know, I took my time, did it right, redid things just to make sure that it was, you know, the best it could possibly be. So take the time to do yours, get to know the mount. You're going to be better off for it. Same procedure that we just did on this will work for advanced VX mounts, the EQ6s and the other EQ mounts. They're very similar, so breaking them down and, you know, doing this is going to be pretty much the same. So we replaced motors, we retapped stripped out bolt holes, we hypertuned it, we polished, we greased, we sanded it, we changed bearings. You know, we did a lot to this, but as you can see, the end results were definitely worth the investment. So balancing this is going to be a breeze. Guiding is going to be much better just because you're well balanced. So it's a win-win. I don't think I could have got anything better. You know, if I spent any longer on this, it is what it is, and it's just awesome. So I'm really pleased with it. I hope you guys are getting the same results as I did. You know, so it's just a matter of working at it, fine-tuning, really doing, you know, investigating things. If, you know, something's not working properly, take a closer look at it. You know, see what you got to do to fix it. It's going to be worth it. So I really hope you guys found this video helpful. Thanks again for watching. I appreciate it. Take care.